Everybody has to suffer in life. Nobody gets a free pass on that one. And you know what? For a lot of people, that's the greatest obstacle they have to faith. If there's really a God, why does he let us suffer? Maybe he's not there. Maybe he just doesn't care. Now, sometimes our suffering is caused by other people's selfishness or by our own bad choices. And we have this capacity for love. That also means that the opposite extreme is a possibility too. We have the ability to kill each other. We have the ability to abandon each other. I mean, we want to blame God for everything. I mean, like, God, if you're really there, why are children starving in Haiti? And I think God's looking down from heaven saying, I was about to ask you that question. Sometimes though, sometimes our suffering is not caused by our bad choices. Sometimes our suffering is just caused by the fact that we have to deal with the frailty of our human condition. We're not living in the Garden of Eden anymore. We have to deal with death. We got to deal with things like cancer. We got to deal with things like tsunamis that claim 10,000 lives. And what then? You know, a lot of times that kind of experience is what brings about not just that intellectual problem with faith, but that gut-wrenching question, why? God, are you really there? I think of Lazarus' sister Mary in Scripture. After Lazarus died, she ran up to Jesus and said, Lord, if you were here, this wouldn't have happened. Now, there's good theological explanations for why a God of love would let us suffer. He doesn't cause us to suffer, but he lets us suffer, but only with a plan to bring about some greater good. Even if that's a good that we only see from the perspective of eternity. See, God's the author of life. And he knows how the story ends. And if he ties the whole story together, man, a good ending redeems every up and down and twist and turn that happens in every chapter along the way. You know, the ultimate example of God letting bad things happen to bring about some greater good is the death of his son. He let Jesus die on a cross. That's not because he abandoned mankind. Christians call the day that Jesus died Good Friday, even though it's the worst evil imaginable. The killing of God in the flesh. Yet we call it Good Friday because it's the source of the greatest blessing we can imagine. Easter Sunday and our victory over sin and death and despair. It's because of Good Friday that we know that the grave doesn't get the final word. But you know what? All those theological explanations, they only go so far. You know, when you're experiencing profound suffering, you're not necessarily going to be thinking, well, Chris said God writes the story from beginning to end, sees the whole thing, big picture, blah, blah, blah. You know, no. Sometimes when you're in intense pain, that's all you could see. You know what helps me at a time like that? I look to the cross. See, the central image of Christianity is not a guy saying, hey, come follow me, and everything's going to be easy all the time. You know, even if you don't believe in God, the cross says one thing really clearly. Life is really difficult sometimes. But as a Christian, I can never look at my God and say, you don't know what this is like to deal with pain, to deal with suffering, to watch your body fall to pieces in front of you, to have people who are supposed to be there for you all take off. Because he does. See, Jesus never promised us freedom from suffering. What he promises us is his presence with us in our suffering. What he promised us is that because we can unite our suffering with his on the cross and offer up to God for the salvation of the world, is that pain can have a purpose. What he promised us is the hope of Easter Sunday and that death doesn't have the final word. What he promised us is an example of heroic love in the middle of our suffering. See, he didn't suffer so we wouldn't have to. He suffered so we'd know how to. So even when you're in those darkest moments of life, where you want to just cry out, God, where are you? You know where he is? He's on the cross right next to you, saying, my God, why have you forsaken me? So you never have to say those words alone.